significantly. And it's part of the process that we have to go through. We have to reduce the size of government, make it more efficient again. I said you had over 10 agencies regulating the CDOs. And nobody did a job. One would be that actually functioned would be far better than more than 10 that do nothing.
You know, one of the things I've noticed in your writings, Martin, you make a lot of reference to the Roman Empire, and like yourself, I'm a student of Roman history. If you were to recommend something on Rome that our listeners could read that would give them sort of some insights, because we seem to be running parallel to many of the things that caused the eventual decline of the Roman Empire, what book would you read? Would you recommend Gibbons?
Well, Gibbons is probably one of the better ones, but it has maybe a bit of a bias in it as far as religion is concerned. He was fairly oppressed by religion. When he wrote it, you have to keep in mind that this was also coming out of the period of the great religious wars in England between the Catholics and the Protestants. So he tended to look at things a little bit more religiously, giving it much more credence than what it was worth. If you really, I'm trying to finish a book on it to really bring it together from a lot of different sources. There's no one particular source I can tell you. But I think what Gibbons missed on the religious side was that the real conversion to Christianity came only when the economy collapsed, so that people were praying to their various different gods and nothing happened. And that is when they really turned to Christianity. And this is in the 3rd century, so that when you have Constantine basically in battle, he's marching forward under the sign of the cross, etc. So that is really where the major persecutions took place and where the big shift in religious values take place. And that really was driven by the economy more than anything else at that stage. That's where you get the big surge. But prior to that, Christianity was a minor type sect. The persecutions began largely because Nero was the first one to do it, and he wanted to basically blame them instead of himself for setting fire to Rome.
So outside of Gibbons, outside that bias, is there any book that you've read personally that had an impact in your thinking?
Well, I would say Adam Smith, really, his Wealth of Nations, I think really is probably the beginning and the end really in economics, that it's fairly simple and straightforward, and that is that everybody operates under their own self-interest. And that not only applies personally to various different individuals, but also to government. So that's why communism failed, because it sounds nice. You create government and you hand them and you take all the toys away from the rich, but all you did was you took them from one party and put them in the hands of the other one, and then that was power, and they didn't want to give that up. So you can't get away from the self-interest. Doesn't matter who it is. It's our problem with government right now. As we've been talking, it's going to become much more aggressive in taxation because its self-interest is to survive. It will not reform willingly at any point in time. It just has never happened. So when you get to these points in history where the debt is always what destroys every society going back to 6000 BC, and there were debt crises that Aristotle wrote about. So this isn't nothing new. It's the same thing all the time. There were real estate speculations in Athens that you talked about how real estate collapsed. I mean, it's hard for me to point you to one particular book. I mean, I've read so many different things, but I would say that the self-interest concept of Adam Smith is by far probably the best overview. And then there are a lot of different books I've read on specific periods. So the one I'm trying to write now is to try and gather all that together and bring it into one place so that you can actually look at Athens, et cetera, in comparison.
Well, when that book is complete, please give me a heads up, because I'd love to have you on the program and discuss it. Martin, as we close, give out your website, because you publish a lot of good information that you make available to the public free. But also you are going to be cranking up the computer modeling in terms of forecasting which will be a subscription service. Spend a moment, if you would, as we close, and tell our listeners about that.
Well, we began as a public service, providing information, historical comparisons and things of this nature, and detailed as to what is happening politically on a global scale. And just as we were talking about the press, I mean, our readership now it's over 500,000, and we provide it all free as a public service. And, I mean, the New York Times, to put it in comparison, has a circulation of 800,000. So we're pretty large on an international scale at this point. And it is mainly provided to give people the sources where to actually find a lot of these different things and what's actually truly happening. And that you can get at ArmstrongEconomics.com or MartinArmstrong.org. And they're provided, you'll go on there, you can pull down reports written for the last several years. That's all provided for free. So we have a lot of students, that are always using it and things of that nature, and you can translate it into different languages. So it's been very, very good for a lot of people over particularly this chaotic period in time.
Well, keep up the good work, Martin. As always, it's a pleasure to be speaking with you. I want to wish you a healthy and prosperous new year. And once again, if you'd like to follow Martin's work, just go to ArmstrongEconomics.com. That's ArmstrongEconomics.com or ArmstrongEconomics.org. And we've been speaking with the head of Armstrong Economics, Martin Armstrong. Martin, thanks so much for joining us on the program.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me.
You can subscribe to Financial Sense NewsHour in the iTunes and BlackBerry podcast libraries or at feeds.feedburner.com/FSN. Find more information about our guests at www.financialsense.com/newshour. Friend us at www.facebook.com/financialsenseonline. For our on-the-go listeners, you can access Financial Sense on your mobile device at m.financialsense.com. The Financial Sense NewsHour is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered as a solicitation or offer to purchase or sell any securities. The investments, investment strategies, and investment philosophies discussed or presented on the NewsHour each involve their own unique risk factors, which are not discussed on the show. Responses to listener inquiries are based on the personal opinions of James Poplava and do not take into account listeners' suitability, objectives, or risk tolerance. Financial Sense NewsHour and its parent company shall not be liable for any financial losses that result from investing in any companies profiled on or advertising with Financial Sense, or arising out of the use of any material on the NewsHour. Be advised that you invest at your own risk.